My name is Alexander Hamilton. I am the co-founder of Vobling. Currently, I'm the CEO of Vobling Asia, which is our first expansion offshores. The topic of today is powering the adaptation of XR in business, or I should probably also say powering the adoption of XR in business. And just to get things started, let's weed out the term XR. So XR is more or less an umbrella term for virtual and augmented reality. So, if you put them on two extremes, where virtual reality is on one end and augmented reality is on the other, and mixed reality is between, XR encompasses all of that. Some of you may know it as a term that was heavily enforced by Unity a while ago, right? I think it was end of year 2017, they ripped out AR and VR from all documentation and strictly enforced XR, breaking many of our apps in the process. But, hey, at least we have a good term encompassing everything in the field of augmented and virtual reality, right? Vobling, the company I am the acting CEO for in Asia, is an XR agency. So we develop, or we specialize and develop XR applications. So this is our sole source of business activity. So you can see some of our major clients on here. I think we have 60 plus cases now on our website over our 3 years. But you can also see that it's a wide range of different industries here, because Saab is in defense. You have Stockholm University, obviously not in defense. Metro Publishing, Toby, eye tracking, so on and so forth. In this field right now, you kind of have to have this wide shotgun approach, because if you're specializing this early on at this level of technological maturity for XR, you're not going to have a very good time as a business, because it's going to be hard to break even, right? Currently, we're in Stockholm and in Manila. We were founded back in Stockholm. I am Swedish. So we were founded there about 3.5 years ago. And 3 years ago, we expanded to Manila as our first venture offshore. We expanded to Manila because we wanted a good platform, a good portal to the rest of Asia. Not only where we could facilitate some of our development, but also as a spring for business development in Southeast Asia and for the rest of Asia as well. I'm full-time resident of Manila right now, so that's where I am. When we were founded in 2015, we thought that VR and AR was here to change everything. We thought that VR and AR would revolutionize pretty much everything we saw back then. We thought the technology finally was here. But as many of you know, the various headsets that were launched, they didn't do that well. All the hype around the Oculus Rift kind of fizzled outright. I remember in sales pitches we had back home in Sweden, where we spoke to, among many other companies, a chain of cinemas. And we sat in a meeting with hotshot executives of that cinema chain, and we told them, do you guys know you'll basically be out of business 3 years from now, because nobody will go to the cinema anymore. Everyone will have virtual cinemas at home. So you need to invest in virtual reality through us, otherwise we'll go out of business. Not quite what happened, right? I mean, IMAX did quite a substantial investment in virtual reality technology, but if you're in the loop, in the news loop of XR, you will know that they finally shut down their VR cinemas 2 weeks ago. So that kind of ended the IMAX investment in VR. So clearly it didn't work out for them, and it didn't work out for many others who want to venture into the technology. So let's have a look, kind of what happened. We thought it would explode, because this hype that was around for 3, 4, 5 years ago was built on a new wave of hardware. It was during the Oculus Rift Kickstarter where this technology was kind of re-hyped and reignited, because they preached the fact that technology was finally here compared to the 90s, where we had the previous hype. In the 90s, the pinnacle or the climax of the hype came through the Nintendo Virtual Boy that had been kind of hyped up by popular culture such as Star Trek, because people were watching Star Trek and they saw the holodeck and they thought that that was possible with the current generation of technology. Nintendo Virtual Boy released this console that not a lot of people know about called the Nintendo Virtual Boy. You don't know about it because guess what? It didn't do that well, right? So we thought in 2015 that, okay, with the Oculus Rift, we can finally achieve the holodeck. We can achieve the Matrix and Ready Player One, right? Well, you know, that didn't quite happen. But let's see why people were so excited back in the 90s. This created a hype that was similar in the 2010s.
It came from the third dimension with its own brain, its own voice, its own legs. There's only one problem. It needs your eyes. Virtual Boy, see it now in 3D.
Looks pretty cool, right? Who wouldn't be excited about that? But, you know, the sad reality is that expectation is not often matched by reality. So you see kind of to the left what people expected in the Virtual Boy, and to the right you see an actual a screen capture from what you saw when you put your eyes in the Virtual Boy. It's this horrendous single perspective experience with awful rasterized graphics that, you know, it's not a very pleasant experience. So we thought that, okay, with the Oculus Rift, we can finally move away from stuff like that and closer to Star Trek, right? Not quite what happened, you know. With the Oculus Rift, we kind of ended up with the blockbuster application, or game you should call VR chat, still quite far away from what people expected, right? Rather than have ultra-realistic environments, you kind of had these hastily built environments where people would just run around in total anarchy shouting at you. But compared to the 90s, there are two important differences. So now, good or relatively good head-mounted displays are available to the general public at quite a reasonable price, right? Even though they're not what we expected, the headsets are, you know, they're way better than the Virtual Boy, right? In addition to this, these headsets may be powered by game engines that can be utilized by anyone. Game engines like Unity, right? They didn't exist in the mid-1900s, or 1900s, even less then, but in the 1990s. But game engines exist and are enabling XR developers like ourselves and like many other out there who are developing VR and AR applications. Thus, anyone can develop VR and AR apps with Unity. So this was the main difference now, this time around, when the hype reignited compared to the 90s. This has led to a democratization of access to VR. And despite the, you know, the bad graphics of old VR, VR has been utilized a long time, right? We've had defense, we've had a lot of research done in VR regardless of any technological maturity. So what I thought in 2014 together with my brother was that, okay, despite any, you know, bad graphics, these previously proven paradigms would probably carry over to the new hardware. So these old headsets, everything that was researched and established with these old headsets would probably carry on or carry over to headsets like the Samsung Gear VR, the Oculus Rift, and the HTC Vive, right? And these proven paradigms, you know, they consist of countless of studies that have been done in and of virtual reality, proving its usefulness in the fields of military research and psychology. Because it's not a big secret that aerospace has been incredibly interested in virtual reality because it allows you to train pilots safely. It allows you to conduct experiments which are easily replicable for psychology. It allows you to do research because you don't have to do many of the things associated with physical research. So we thought that if old virtual reality headsets and research conducted where the graphics look like this, if they have ecological validity, which they actually had thanks to these studies, maybe we could actually bring these concepts to a new generation of headsets. So me and my brother founded our first company called myMERS. And our grand idea was to create a virtual reality platform for evidence-based apps that can improve, manage, and treat the minds of millions. And achieve this through the new generation of virtual reality headsets. Because the fact that virtual reality can be used in treating mental illness, such as phobia, has been true for a very long time. Psychologists were doing research in virtual reality in the 90s. They didn't care about Nintendo Virtual Boy, right? Because they had their huge rigs in university environments which cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? But we thought that we could take their findings and all their research on their old headsets and kind of bring them into the new generation of headsets. And many of you may think like, of course you can. Why wouldn't you? Well, it doesn't quite work that way in research, right? You need to establish, you need to reprove the facts if you change variables. The new variable in this case were new headsets. So you actually need to conduct a lot of research based on the new headsets in order to come to the same conclusion, i.e. these truths carry on regardless of headsets. Because, you know, probably if you just improve the graphics, the results are going to be better, right? Well, that was the case. And it led us to developing our first application called ITZY. ITZY is a virtual reality app for the treatment of arachnophobia. And that's the treatment of fear of spiders. This application was used in a Samsung campaign for marketing of their Samsung Gear VR headsets. So we were super excited about this. So this is kind of a commercial for Samsung.
Rädsla är ju någonting som upplevs i närvaro av ett upplevt hot, oavsett om det finns där eller inte.
Okay. Det må være en socialiseret form for frygt. Det må være noget, jeg har taget fra nogle andre, fordi den er ikke logisk. Der er ikke nogen fare for mit liv her.
Jag tror att det är lika minst är att det är där och så plötsligt så är det borta. En mardröm är att den ska liksom hoppa upp och hoppa in i mitt hår. Jag tror att jag kommer att imponera allt vi gör. Jag tror inte vi kommer känna igen oss i den här världen. 15 år.
So aside from a marketing campaign, ITZY was a fully fledged study at Stockholm University. So it was, I think, a year of effective treatment of subjects and then 2 years of writing and kind of compiling the conclusions, right? And ITZY showed that, you know, not only was the Gear VR as efficient or more efficient at treating arachnophobia or mental health as, you know, old generation headsets, but the Samsung Gear VR was almost as effective as in vivo treatment of the same phenomena. So the virtual reality treatment for spider phobia was almost as good as real psychologists sitting with the person in the same room and exposing you to real life spiders, which was fantastic, you know. So it validated the concept or the idea that, you know, it doesn't really matter what type of hardware you use in virtual reality because the paradigms and the conclusions kind of carry over to better hardware. What this means is that, okay, we finally have a hardware platform we can scale to the entire world, right? Because the previous generation of virtual reality headsets based at, you know, in university Harvard environments, you know, you can't scale that very easily because the CPU or the computing power, you know, takes up an entire room. But now with the Samsung Gear VR, you can finally replicate a treatment and distribute it almost indefinitely all over the world. So it's validated kind of our mission statement of being able to or attempting to treat millions of people with a new generation of headset. When we were developing ITZY, however, we started getting a lot of requests by others other than, you know, researchers. Many companies, because of our exposure in media, came to us and said, hey, we also want to ride on this new generation of headsets because we, like you guys, don't care about what the consumer thinks about the Oculus Rift. we want to actually implement this technology in practice now, because it's good enough now and it's available for us as well. So the current generation of VR hardware meant that not only fighter pilots could be trained in VR, but also fast food and warehouse workers. This led us to branch out in a completely new company, because we didn't want to do consultancy work in myMERS. So we created Vobling, which became more or less a consultancy XR company, where we would pursue these requests from other companies and organizations for practical implementations of virtual reality. So the way it looked kind of was this. In 2014, we had the inception of myMERS. We got a grant thanks to the kind of innovative idea from the European Union. But in 2015, we spun off Vobling and conceived Vobling. My brother has been running myMERS ever since and received seed funding this year for their virtual pharmacy. This year, we also acquired our first competitor called Raver. And later on, a couple of weeks ago, we ourselves were acquired by a larger company called Boblar. Currently, we're running the businesses simultaneously, because Boblar is an AR app manufacturer. They make games, and we are a consultancy firm. So when we were running Vobling, or when we spun off Vobling, we saw that a majority of our work came from R&D, marketing, visualization, and training. Some of these categories are more or less overlapping, right? A lot of people use visualization as marketing, and a lot of people use visualization as R&D. But a lot of people wanted, or a lot of companies wanted to try VR to figure out, is this a good medium to digitalize certain aspects of our business operations? And one of our first project partners was a company called Toby. Toby is a company manufacturing eye tracking technology. Eye tracking is the practice of recording and playing back user eye behavior in traditionally physical environments. So you would wear a pair of specially outfitted Toby glasses. It records your eye movement, and it records your point of view, overlays this, puts a heat map on it, so you're able to see where users look. This has traditionally been done in real life. So companies would do mock-ups of store environments, put these on users, let users loose in whatever environment, and then you would record their user behavior. Clearly, with the new generation of VR hardware, there is an interest in digitalizing eye tracking, which is exactly what happened.
What if you could understand what actually drives your customer behavior? What if you could optimize your design before going into production? What if you could identify human errors before they occur? What if eyes could speak? Built on years of eye tracking knowledge, Toby Pro VR Analytics gives you instant access to unconscious responses to a product or environment while being fully immersed in VR. While VR puts you in complete control over an environment, allowing you to quickly iterate scenarios, eye tracking will tell you exactly what triggered a change in attention and behavior throughout the consumer journey. Eye tracking makes it possible to observe attention and interactions to understand how professionals react in stressful and challenging situations. Toby Pro VR Analytics is designed to work in 3D and with actual eye movement data. Analytics on participants' attention, interaction, and navigation are available at the push of a button. Visualizations including heat maps, opacity maps, and journey mapping are automated. Combining eye tracking with VR will let you catch branding mistakes before they make it into the marketplace, conduct more efficient, engaging, and safer training, test new real estate at the concept phase to optimize wayfinding and experience before construction, and much more. Toby Pro VR Analytics will help you make better decisions.
So what this is in reality, it's an HTC Vive headset equipped with the same type of sensors that would traditionally be equipped in a real pair of glasses. So instead of having these real pair of glasses we previously saw here, the same type of technology is, you don't need the front-facing camera inside of a VR headset, obviously, because it's rendered in 3D. But the cameras pointing towards the eyes are outfitted inside of an HTC Vive headset. So we co-developed a framework for Unity, where you would marry the Toby hardware and API together with Unity and be able to do eye tracking inside of Unity environments. So it's more or less a plugin for Unity at this point, where you can plug in the Toby hardware, the Toby headset, and then launch and implement the plugin, and then gather statistical data from eye tracking in pretty much any Unity environment out there. So people who make games or people who make retail environments inside of Unity can all of a sudden leverage eye tracking inside of these environments. Because previously, wearing a headset, you don't really know if the person is looking somewhere, because we can only figure out the general direction the user's head is pointing, right? We have no idea if the user has closed her eyes, or if the user is looking dead ahead, or if the user is looking to the top right. But now with eye tracking technology, we can actually figure these things out. And it's also one of the reasons why a lot of hardware manufacturers believe that this is the future. The future will be outfitting almost all headsets with eye tracking technology, because not only is it a useful way of gathering analytics regarding user behavior, but it's also a way of input, right? Because if you can start interacting with things with your eyes rather than your head's general direction, that's a huge benefit. And it's led to companies like Qualcomm implement eye tracking as default in their reference headset. So here you can see the Qualcomm Snapdragon 845 VR reference headset, which was released this year. And these reference headsets are kind of a gold standard for hardware manufacturers such as Samsung, Acer, and ASUS, who also make VR headsets, but often rely on the chipsets from Qualcomm. Another one of our serious applications is an application we're developing together with a train operator in Europe. And we ended up with this. It's in Swedish, so hopefully everyone can read the text down there.
SJ satsar nu på virtual reality, eller VR, som ett komplement till befintlig utbildning.
Genom att introducera VR i operationsutbildningar minskar vi beroendet av fysiska tåg. Och det tar oss ett steg närmare till att bli ett av Sveriges mest digitaliserade bolag. Träningen är säker, verklighetstrogen och den ger oss en möjlighet att träna var som helst och när som helst på sånt som är dyrt att simulera i verkligheten.
Genom arbetet har vi lärt oss massa om VR, inte minst från den värdefulla återkopplingen vi har fått från instruktörer och alla andra som har provat våra prototyper. Det har hjälpt oss att säkerställa att VR blir användbart i praktiken.
Det var jätteroligt att få VR. Det känns hur utbildningen kan bli kompis. Det känns som man var på plattformen och på
Ett bra utbildningsmedel, tycker jag. Fräscha upp mina kunskaper. Ett jättebra sätt att få använda det på, och även för nya nyanställda. Jag är stolt över att vi arbetar så mycket för framtiden.
VR-utbildningen har redan småintroducerats och ska vara en del av utbildningen för förare och ombordpersonal på nya Expo. Planen är att fortsätta genom att ta fram VR-utbildning från flera av våra fordon, och snart kommer VR finnas på flera organisationer som man själv kan utveckla sina kunskaper. Vi hoppas att VR ska göra träningen enklare och mer tillgänglig, effektivare och säkrare, och inte minst, det ska vara roligt.
So SJ approached us, and they had a problem, because when they're training new employees, new chauffeurs and conductors, they rely on a physical train. Currently, they only have one of these training trains, so to speak, and moving this train along huge distances is obviously quite expensive, because you're not only disrupting traffic, but you're also spending energy and time and staff on moving these training trains. So they were extremely interested in digitalizing large parts of their staff new hire training. So we developed the SJ, which is the train operator, the SJ virtual training platform, where we basically used Unity as a game engine simulating all the training scenarios, and we married it with the train operator's physical training material and their 3D models, which they had because they're a train manufacturer, so they sat on these 3D models. So we were able to use these 3D models and create training scenarios inside of Unity. This is one of our current ongoing projects. So what you're seeing here is kind of a pre-alpha build of our first fully fledged product. Because there's an issue of scalability when you're developing training applications for train operators, right? Because the trains utilized by this train operator are more or less unique for the operator. So there's no real scalability if you want to move training scenarios to a different, a different country or a different train operator for that matter, because they're not using the same trains. Here we're going to see an app which has far greater opportunities for scalability, because electrical circuitry is more or less universal, right? So this is something that could be scaled entirely differently across countries and across organizations. So what it allows you to do is very safely and very efficiently train pretty much anyone in electrical circuitry at home. It's being developed, co-developed with the Trade Association for Electrical Fitters. We're using their training material and expert feedback in order to kind of customize and create this application, built, of course, on Unity engine, but developed by us. And we're currently in talks with not only educational facilities who are interested in educating students in electrical engineering, but also in companies. We're trying to talk to companies like Schneider Electric who might be interested in training their staff and also marketing their electrical fittings towards potential buyers, right? So similarly, when VR hardware became available, Unity is and has been pushing hard for extensive AR support. Technically, AR has been around for quite a long time. Image recognition-based augmented reality has been around since the 2000s, right? Building on before or other similar frameworks. But it's only recently when we've had access to frameworks such as ARKit and ARCore developed by Apple and Google and implemented on the newest line of smartphone technology. So in line with the hardware push, Unity has been fighting for, or has been developing extensive support for us in order to implement these new technologies. Because ARKit and ARCore opens up entirely new possibilities in terms of augmented reality. So one of our first projects with ARCore in this case was this pilot application we developed for Weber. Weber developed, they manufacture industrial equipment such as industrial pumps, so on and so forth. This is more or less a marketing application, and the common denominator for Weber apps is the fact that these products are quite hard to move around. I think this weighs around 300 to 400 kilograms, so it's not something when you just grab under your arm when you're heading to a sales pitch, right? It's way more complicated than that because you actually have to move this around. Not only is it hard to move around, but it's also hard to see the unique selling point of this product for Weber. In this case, the unique selling point is basically the internal flow of the machine. But digitalizing this machine through augmented reality allows you to pretty much visualize anything you want with these machines. So in this case, it allowed them to more or less visualize unique selling point within the machine. So let's have a look on the basic functionality. Today, it's not much of an app anymore because there are tons of these apps out there, but it still proves a powerful point, and a point which we noted and later developed into something completely different. So it has very basic augmented reality functionality. It's built on ARKit in this case, and it allows you to place it realistically in a digital environment rendered by your smartphone through the camera. It allows you also to take a picture and send it as if the actual product was there. Also this built in Unity, enabled with Unity and through ARKit. We basically took the 3D models of Weber, who have these 3D models for manufacturing anyway, and created this Weber product placement tool. But in line with development of this application, we realized that in a very soon future, a huge amount of companies are going to want something like this. An item placement app that just allows them to virtually place their products in a digital space. And this because we've had companies like IKEA releasing the IKEA Place app, which is more or less a digital catalog over their furniture, which allows you to place IKEA furniture pretty much everywhere. So we saw that, and we were like, we thought to ourselves, everyone is going to want this. So we developed our one other product called Modular. So this is basically a demo of the capabilities of Modular. And Modular is more or less something which we call an item placement framework. So it just allows you to super easily place any 3D item inside of augmented reality. And it's a framework which we can pretty much plug into any 3D database and utilize immediately to a very cheap price. Because we thought that, okay, let's clone IKEA Place and allow everyone to make IKEA Place-like clones. So just as before, this is made in Unity engine, and it's a platform agnostic framework, which means that when we deploy it, it can be easily deployed by both ARKit and ARCore devices, i.e. Android and Apple devices. So this will become legacy once Unity releases their own platform agnostic framework, which I think is rumored to be in future iterations of the Unity engine, right? So we're racing against Unity on this one, but it's led to the creation of our first real product, or our first white label product. But in any case, games are not the pushing force for XR technology. It will always be practical application. Interest might be sparked by popular media such as Star Trek and The Matrix, as insinuated before, but it will be real life applications because the technology is not yet mature enough for regular consumers who are just looking for entertainment, right? I don't think I've met a single person who bought the HTC Vive or the Oculus Rift headset and uses it like their cell phone, right? You use it in short spurts, maybe once or twice, and a lot of people never use it after, right? Companies are just realizing the benefits of XR right now. So we are in the beginning of the usefulness or the useful era for virtual reality and augmented reality applications. Companies like us, it's important to note that we're far from unique. Nothing you've seen today is particularly astonishing for anyone involved in the business or in XR. But the common denominator for us is that we're all almost equipped with Unity, and together, all the agencies like Vobling, like myMERS, we are powering the adaptation of XR in business. So we are pushing the boundaries together with technology like Unity, ARKit, ARCore, and all the other hardware out there in order to make and drive XR forward, because it's the practical implementations which will push the technology forward. And so far, we're having some pretty great results. So I'm not going to recite all the statistics you see from the slide here, but it's all taken from a very recent study by Capgemini, which attempts to compile the operational benefits of XR in their business. So you can see companies like Ford, Boeing, and Airbus actually being able to gather statistics and real figures of the benefits they've had from XR. And whether or not they've implemented XR through external consultants like us or through internal teams like themselves, it remains to be seen. But we are doing similar things, and I know many others are doing similar things to a lot of companies. An increasing number of Fortune 500 companies are working with XR. I think the latest figure was that 60% are actively implementing, no, not 60%, but 60 Fortune 500 companies are actively implementing must-need use cases for virtual reality. A must-need use case is a use case which is basically not R&D, but a practical implication where they feel like they have to implement this technology. IKEA and IKEA Place certainly being one, Ford, Boeing, and Airbus certainly being more examples. So that was pretty much it I had for today. So if there's any questions or comments, I'd gladly take them now. Connect with me on your social media of choice or through email. So any questions? All right. Thank you.